Good morning, everybody. And I'm really delighted to be here. And I have to bring the apologies of our president, Anna Maria Ajello, because for an unexpected family inconvenient, it is impossible for her to be here today. But for me, it's an honor to be with you to discuss about a topic so relevant, so crucial for our societies. And I have to apologize because I'm on the train, and so I hope that you not have a noise that are disturbing you, hopefully. And as you know, the financial literacy is extremely relevant, especially today after the pandemic, because the financial issues are very important for all the parts of our societies. And so I think it's very important to discuss about it and to find solution on this topic. And as you know, different institutions, several institutions and organizations are working on that in order to find solution how to improve financial literacy and education on this topic, not only for the adults or young adults, but even for the pupils of our primary schools. From my perspective, from my point of view, pupils of the primary schools are crucial in this kind of effort, because it is on that age that we can do the difference. And in this seminar, we asked to our experts to speak about their experiences and what they are doing in terms of research and activities and projects that can help us to find solution and to share together possibilities and how can I say, tools and ways to face, to manage a so big issue for all of us. And the first speaker is Arto Ahonen. I beg your pardon if my pronunciation is not correct. And he is a Finnish scholar, and we are very curious to know and to hear from you the Finnish experience, because we know that you have good results and very interesting perspective that could be very helpful for us. At the end of this round of speeches, we should have a couple of minutes to discuss all together about financial literacy and about what we took into consideration today. So just to give you all the times that you need in order to do your presentation, I'm very happy to give the floor to Arto. Just for your information, you have more or less 10-11 minutes, and if I may, very close to that time, I just say you something just to keep the time and to do the housekeeper. And so thank you very much. And I would like to ask Arto to start his presentation. Thanks again.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your invitation. This was actually came to me from my Finnish colleague, Panu Kalmi, who suggested that maybe I could have a presentation in your symposium, and this was a pleasure for me. So I'm actually presenting PISA financial literacy results, because I'm the national project manager for PISA study in Finland, and these results were published still about a year ago, spring 2020, so they are rather fresh still. So I'm sharing my screen here. And we can start. No. Are you seeing the PISA financial literacy? Yes. Yes. Screen. Okay, good. Because I didn't see it myself here. That's why I was wondering. Okay, talking about the financial literacy in Finland and especially PISA 2018 results in focus. And it was 79 countries participating, as you may know. It's OECD and partner countries and international consortium leading the project. And in Finland, it's Ministry for Education and Culture that finances the project. And our institute or University of Jyväskylä, Finnish Institute for Educational Research, is conducting the research in collaboration with the University of Helsinki. And we have a nationally represented sample, about 8,000 students, which are 15-year-olds. They are actually at the end of their basic education year 9, most of the times. From 240 schools across country participated. I apologize, some of my slides are in Finnish because these are made as a picture, so I just added some English translation in here. Here is the present that because financial literacy in PISA was an optional domain, so only 20 participating countries in financial literacy, but Italy and Finland were among those countries, 13 OECD countries, and then 7 partner countries. So study composition in Finland was that we have these cognitive tasks like reading, literacy, mathematics, science, which are obligatory, and then you have this optional domain, which was financial literacy, and Finland participated the first time on here. And then we have these background questionnaires, which include ICT questionnaire, student questionnaire, financial matters questionnaire. So we have a background questionnaire also for the ICT literacy part. And then we have school questionnaire for principals. And how it was then in PISA, you always count the averages, which is OECD average 500 points, and then 100 points is the standard deviation. So Finland average was the second best of these countries, 537 points, when Estonia was the top country, 547. And then we have Canada, which was close to Finland, not differing statistically from Finland. And then we have Poland, Australia, USA, Portugal, Latvia, Lithuania, Russia, and then on the other side you have also Italy here. In here, 476 points. And here you can see the country that does not differ statistically from this country. So it was Slovakia, about the same level as Italy. And then the distribution of the financial literacy in Finland is shown here. You can see that the lower percentiles in Finland were a bit lower than, for example, Estonia here. And then when you go to higher percentiles, 90 and 95, the best students, they were actually better than in Estonia. So we were a little bit more polarized than our neighbor Estonia. And also when you compare to OECD country, you can see that this trend line is a little bit more steep than in OECD average. And then we talk about the how the socioeconomic background is affecting the financial literacy. Here you have Estonia, blue, and dark blue Finland, and Canada, green, and OECD is the brown one. And also here you can see that in Finland, our line is quite similar to Canada, for example, but then at the top quartile of family background, our students' financial literacy was better than in any other countries. But then when you go on the lower quartiles, you can see that in Finland, the proficiency in financial literacy was lower than in a counterpart country, Estonia, for example, and similar level as Canada. So you can see here that in Finland, the socioeconomic background is affecting financial literacy stronger than in Estonia, for example. And then here you can see PISA is assessing financial literacy in different proficiency levels. And here at the top, you have Estonia, Canada, Poland, and Finland is here. And Finland has the largest amount of students who are at the top proficiency level 5, almost 90, almost at 20%. But also we have a little bit higher amount of students who are at the weakest level 1 and below. No, 2 and below, because this is 2, 1, this first level, 2 and below. So a little bit polarization can be seen here as well. And here, maybe you are interested about Italy. You can see that, okay, in Italy, you have a large amount of students in proficiency level 1. And not that many students on the top level 5. This is about the relative performance when you compared, estimated the performance according to what kind of proficiency they had with mathematics and reading. And in Finland and Estonia as well, like in Brazil, the financial literacy was better than expected when you had only mathematics and reading proficiency taken into account. So our students were better than expected in financial literacy. And when you go, for example, to Italy, you were the last on this on this perspective. So Italian students were performing lower than expected when you take into account mathematics and reading. This is about the variation of the proficiency, how it's differing between within school in the left-hand side and between schools on the right-hand side. So in Finland, the schools are really equal. There's no variation between schools. Only 7% of the variation is between schools. But we have less variation within schools. So students vary within schools. We have the same schools, the very top students, but also the very low performing students. And that's really typical in Finland. Even though we have equal school system and every school is rather similar, but the variation is inside the school. Maybe also between classes, but we couldn't in PISA. You don't assess class base, so we can't track that. And when you look at the Italy, you can see that okay, the variation is smaller than in Finland in overall, but there is some more variation between schools, not that much than in Finland within schools. This is gender difference, and Italy is here on top because you have boys are better than girls, 15 points overperforming the girls. When in Finland, we have the girls better 6 points, but that's not statistically different. So for us, this is really good news because usually in Finland nowadays, girls outperform boys in every domain, not regarding math, science, reading. Girls outperform boys. But this is really good result for Finland because there was no statistical difference in financial literacy between boys and girls, which is really good news. And here you can see the gender gap in reading performance, for example, across all OECD countries. And you can see on the right-hand side, Finland is the top. We have the highest difference between genders in reading performance is over 50 score points, when OECD average is around 30. And for example, Italy here, it's about 25 points. So you have more equal gender, according to genders, than we are in Finland. And this is an index about how the learning money matters in school, all kind of what kind of courses they have learned in school, so what kind of topics regarding money matters the students have in schools. All these put together in an index. And here you can see that this index, I'm sorry, this is really going on top of that Finland's bar, but anyway, it is the strongest effect. Like learning money matters in school has the strongest effect overall in Finland, way stronger than, for example, Estonia or any counterpart countries, and way stronger than in OECD average. So learning in school, learning money matters in school really has an effect to students' financial literacy in Finland. And if you look at Italy, this is a little bit lower, it's like minus. It has this because all these countries are indexed. So this is compared to OECD average, this is smaller effect, weaker effect than OECD average. That's my story. And maybe coming to this last slide still, that we have our students are studying obligatory financial literacy course at the year 9. So it is really close to the time when PISA data was collected. So that may have effect on how much the school learned school courses and this index of learning money matters has affected the performance. But anyway, this was a positive sign from our financial literacy school education. Okay, thank you. This was quick. Hopefully you had some ideas to think about.
Presentation. Thank you very much. And now I would like to give the floor to our colleague and friend, Magda Bianco. Thank you, Magda.
Thank you, Roberto. It's a pleasure to be with you. May I ask Arto to end the presentation?
Sorry.
Otherwise I cannot share. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. I'll try to share my screen as well. And okay, can you see it?
Perfectly.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, so I will briefly discuss the role of financial literacy among youth and some elements of what drives it, and specifically the role of financial education at school, and then some lessons about what to do. Financial literacy among youth, among students mainly, why it matters. Well, I don't think I have to justify it here among us, but I think it's very important. Actually, most of our social decisions, but even day-to-day decisions, now involve economic and or financial components. And here I just cite the Next Generation EU, which is a huge instrument that is being used by governments now, and having an idea about it, about what it is, I think it's essential for our students. And still we know that they are not very well equipped on average. And I just cite a study done by Professor Ajello with others, showing that students, high school and university students, when asked about the great financial crisis, they have very vague idea. They actually attribute it mainly to corrupt government, corrupt politicians, And especially in Italy, they rarely cite the financial system, the banks. So I think it's very relevant that we work on financial education. Now, to do it, we have to understand what drives it, what are the major factors behind a higher level of financial literacy. And the first step is using, as Arno, PISA. PISA is an exceptional instrument to analyze this. Here I report some very preliminary results of a study by two colleagues of mine, Sara Lamboglia and Massimiliano Stacchini, on PISA 2018, on this number of countries, those for which we have microdata available, and they relate to approximately 50,000 observations. We control for countries and schools, fixed effects, and many individual characteristics. But for what I would like to concentrate on are some major results that we have. The first is similar to what Arno was discussing before. We do observe a strong relationship with numeracy, with math skills. That's everywhere, of course. And in Finland, it's in a sense, financial literacy is even stronger than expected from the correlation with math. In Italy, as he anticipated, is lower. Contrary to many other countries. So we expect that there are other factors here at work that might be cultural, that might be related to the way math is taught in our schools. One thing that we analyzed a bit more deeply is the role of teaching styles. Here we use PISA 2012, where we have information on these styles, and specifically on the use of cognitive activations instruments, more interactive instruments that involve more directly students. And here what we find is that actually teaching methods matter. And those who use cognitive activation instruments are more effective in transferring math competencies into financial literacy competencies. So I think this is another lesson that's very relevant for us in understanding what to do. Then another issue is, again, what Arno touched upon, which is financial education taught in school. And we really envy Finland, where it's compulsory in school, very close to PISA tests. In Italy, it's not. Here are statistics on the percentage of students that actually encountered financial topics at school. The blue line is whether they met it in math classes. In orange, whether they met it in any other, in any kind of context, math, other subjects, or external teaching in schools. And you see that there is a lot of variation. Italy, unfortunately, is very low, especially in math classes, but also in other environments. When we repeat the exercise econometrically, we observe that actually encountering financial topics in school matters. It increases financial literacy, both when it's present in math classes, but also generally. So this is another lesson which is very important for us. It matters basically everywhere. We also analyzed another issue, the relationship between digital skills and financial literacy, because, well, the issue is very relevant because now financial instruments are becoming digital financial instruments, and hence we want to understand whether there is a complementarity that, in a sense, we want to exploit, but we also have to be careful about in order to avoid sources of exclusion or further sources of exclusion. So the issue is whether digital skills are becoming complementary to financial skills, to financial literacy skills. And here we analyze it econometrically in another work that is, again, preliminary, but a little bit more advanced than the previous one. Again, on PISA 2018, for this number of countries, approximately 40,000 observations on 15 years old students. What we analyze is the role of digital skills as described by these variables. The first is at which age the kids started using digital devices, and we want to check whether this is associated to higher financial literacy. The second is whether they use digital devices to stay informed, and whether this is associated to financial literacy. The third is whether they have higher confidence with digital financial services. This is more tricky because there is a lot of endogeneity, of course, here. When we control for many other factors, you see the first two columns with red are analyzing the role of using digital devices since an early age. And we see that for those that started late, and late here is beyond 13 years old, we have a negative impact on financial literacy. The second is the use of digital financial devices, digital devices to stay informed, to read news and so on. And we have a positive impact. And of course, this might be related, this might hide other factors like keeping informed in general, being more observant, being more curious, which might affect positively financial literacy. And the third, as I said, which has more endogeneity in it, whether you're more familiar with digital financial services, and this is positively correlated. We don't have a causal relationship here, but it's positively correlated with financial literacy. Now, what to do? What does this tell us about what are the lessons that we have to learn from the future? And here I suggest a few. The first is that obviously curricula are important. As we heard from the Finnish example, introducing elements of financial education in schools, in curricula matters. It might be in math, it might be, as in Italy, we do hope, in civic education, which includes digitalization, but not financial education. And well, it would help, of course, but all this, we think it matters. Of course, there are other elements that might help. Not having the matter into curricula is creating some incentives and having, for example, tests that are relevant for students' curricula might matter. Including elements of financial literacy in textbooks, like math textbooks, having financial literacy questions in textbooks might help, and introducing competitions in schools on these issues might matter. It is something that we are progressively introducing in Italy as well. We have worked with some editors to have questions in textbooks. We have now competition Olympics in economics and finance. So we do hope that this will help. But of course, there is a third issue, which is method. We notice that the way math is taught affects whether its competencies are transferred to financial literacy. So we need to work on this. We need to have interactive, real interactive method to ensure that also math skills are enlarged financial skills, financial literacy. What are we doing in Italy? Well, the Italian Committee for Financial Education has developed guidelines for financial education at schools, which are available for all the teachers, all the schools, and work both in terms of content and method. And hopefully they will help devising a path to lead to curricula in financial education. And specifically what we do as Bank of Italy, as the central bank, we now have a commitment, a strong commitment for on financial education as a complementary instrument for consumer protection, actually. And we do work a lot with schools. We have developed materials for both teachers and students. It's an interactive material full of examples and cases to be developed, and it's supported with online material. We have a competition, which is called Inventing a Banknote. Here I just present one of the winners. Students are incredible at designing actually real banknotes, because the competition provides for very specific, very rigid rules that are the same as the real banknotes have to be drawn. So it's very, very hard, but a lot of schools participate and they draw wonderful banknotes. We do work with schools for working experience, a program that is now envisaged by the Ministry of Education. And here is one of the groups which worked with our colleagues meeting the governor. And we have developed new material during the pandemic for online teaching, for helping professors and students dealing with the necessity of working online. And we expect that this will be very useful also in the future, where probably this will help in devising new methods also for presence, for teaching in presence. As a whole, I think it's really urgent to do something, but I think now we have a lot of tools, a lot of knowledge of what needs to be done. So I think we have really a path to follow to change the future. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Magda. Thank you very much for your very interesting and inspiring presentation. I also think that we have a lot to do, but how can I say, now we can see the way, the path. And so I think it's very important to start and to deal with. Now, I to my colleague Carlo Di Chiacchio from INVALSI. Please, Carlo, over to you.
Okay, thank you. I try to share my presentation. Okay. Okay, you can see the slides.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so thank you. Good morning to everyone. You see the slides overall with the speaker notes?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Okay,
yes,
that's
perfect.
right, because I have two screens. So, and my presentation is about a larger brief report on some results, some preliminary results about a larger study we've been doing with Professor Ajello and my colleagues Sabrina Grego and Daniela Totti. And the main question we raise is try to go beyond the results of PISA study, and in particular we wonder if there were other elements beyond the score in order to better understand the difficulties that students face during the resolution of financial problem. So as Arto presentation showed clearly, Italian results of our students are characterized by low competencies, especially below OECD average, and a high share of students below the minimum level of competence, and a low share of students with AI as financial competencies. Moreover, less than other countries, however, also in Italy, the family, socioeconomic and cultural background matter in shaping financial literacy. And as we saw from Arto's presentation, also taking account of reading and mathematical skills, our students are lacking, especially on the specific part of financial literacy. So on the basis of these results, as I said before, we wonder if there were other additional characteristics playing a role in shaping the financially literacy problem solving, just go beyond the score. And so we wanted to investigate especially the reasoning processes involved in problem solving of financial problems as proposed by the PISA survey. So our approach for this study was especially qualitative in nature. And in fact, we used the thinking aloud technique by interviewing 32 students attending to CE from Rome, 16 boys and 16 girls. And the experimental material we set up was made of a protocol interview and a booklet containing a selection of financial literacy units plus warm-up item just to make student practice with the technique. And at the end of the booklet, we asked students to evaluate their perception of the items we proposed them in terms of ease or difficulty and comprehensibility, just to have a clearer picture of what they are feeling during responses. The analysis of the interviews were based on the grounded theory. So the categories, we didn't have a priori hypothesis, but we wanted to find out what emerged from the data. The main results showed up the presence of two major categories of reasoning. The first is related to exposure to problematic situation in terms of familiarity of experiences and also the school demands in terms of conventionality of the requests. The other major category is more linked to the reasoning processes, especially interpretative processes related to task characteristics and also to the cognitive demand of the task. I will briefly give you some example. As far as concerns the first category, usually we think that the experiences we do every day are a sort of facilitators in solving problems. However, when we analyzed the interviews, we found out that in some cases, the experience resulted into an obstacle instead of a resource. Although the students' experiences potentially make the students able to solve the task correctly, they seem to use that experience inadequately. An example of this category can be found in the item of the unit telephone plan that I show you in the slide. An example is the situation, the stimulus, and in this task, students have to compare two telephone plans that have different characteristics, and they have to identify a financial advantage of plan 2. A very common plan that has a credit paid in advance that lasts 1 month at most, and less is if the plan, the credits is consumed before that period. Or even if this type of plan is very up to date, and it is usually what we use, many students give the wrong answer. I wrote an example of the student's response who say that on the basis of that experience, it's very common. However, the plan 2 is no longer used, and even if this is a situation experienced frequently. On the other hand, the unfamiliarity of the situation sometimes hinder the ability to read the problem. In this slide, I show you another example of a release item. Is a task where the student had to complete, to assign the priority of purchases, and the students has to decide whether the item in the list is necessary or not. And the condition is the characters of the story that have to stick with the list have have no saving and they are hired to the work for a short period. But in this case, as you see from the student's response, he can't understand what is the meaning of the garden furniture. What is the, he said, what furniture should be put in the garden? And as far is concerned for conventionality of school requests, in some students' comments, there is a reference to the novelty of this type of requests that sometimes are perceived as different from those the school asks. And in this case, in PISA items, the solution is not reached through calculations, remembering learned notions, but through identification, analysis, and correlation of problems elements. As you can see from the sentence of the students, they say it's not difficult, but you have to think on it a bit. So it's quite different perception. For the second major category, I mean the interpretative process is the picture. It's quite different and very within sort of nuances within the categories. There are different problems within. Firstly, some respondents do not recognize the elements of the problem, and so they need to reframe the problem, activating personal scripts. If we look at the spending choices unit that I showed you before, students say that the items are all important simply because they are on the list. Otherwise, they would not have been included in the list. In other cases, the order in which these items appear indicates the priority for the purchases. If the TV appears in the first place, it is a necessary purchase. House rent will be a priority, but since it appears in the second place, it means that it's not so important. Garden furniture would not be necessary, but if it is included in the list, it means that it is deserve special attention. In other cases, how we use the item in the list determines their ranking. TV is important because it is a means of entertainment, of information. Garden furniture is not considered necessary because its use is unknown. And finally, we also found out a sort of paradox. The formally correct solution is supported by reasons that are completely unrelated to the disciplinary field. This is only in one case, but it was very interesting. Cable TV, no, because today there is more up-to-date TV, while paying rent house, yes, because if you don't pay, it's a penal offense. And sometimes a lack of reading competence leads also to a misinterpretation of the task, as in the example that I show below, where the coin, the Z, is read as a type of tomato, we guess. So the convenience of buying 10 kilos of tomatoes in a box compared to 10 kilos of tomatoes in bulk is no longer in the lower cost, but in the fact that there would be more tomatoes, 27.5. In this case, the lack of reading competence and the scholastic, maybe, habit of recalling procedural aspect unrelated to the saints make the student lose sight of the meaning of the problem. See? And meaning of the problem is reading and of the solution proposed. So, in conclusion, we may say some characteristics. In the financial reasoning, there is the duality of reasonable and rational. The other issue is the risk of misinterpreting, losing the meaning of the task, and also the introduction of irrelevant elements. And what we consider important is that the complexity of financial reasoning has to take into account not only the quantitative reasoning in terms of reading and math, but also to qualitative aspect of reasoning processes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlo. Thank you very much. I think it's very, very important to have also this research approach in order to help the policies and the practice, because I think this circular feedback between research and practice and policies is extremely, extremely relevant. Now, just to save time, I'm very happy to leave the floor to Emanuela Rinaldi. Thank you very much for your presentation. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto, and thanks to the organizer for inviting me to the symposium. My notes are about the last survey of ONEF. For those who are not familiar with ONEF, it is the National Observatory of Economic and Financial Education, which has been set in 2017 by a group of academic researchers and dedicated to the systematic monitoring of economic and financial education programs implemented in Italy. It involves academic and practitioners who follow a precise monitoring process through a weekly research with keywords on Google, via word of mouth and attending conference workshops where programs, resources, or initiatives about financial education are discussed, and through a systematic literature review. Compared to other observatory or database like the one of INFE, ONEF has an innovative features. That is a questionnaire that can be filled in by the subject autonomously, but if a subject do not fill in the questionnaire, a researcher from ONEF do what is called an unsolicited rating. That means that he or she fill in the questionnaire with the public available information about that financial education projects into the data set of ONEF. In this way, we managed to collect information about a lot of projects, small, medium, or large in their size, and gathering qualitative and quantitative information. In order to be entered in ONEF, the project has to be free of charge for the final users, even if there might be some banks funding the programs or some public or private institution. It has to be visible on the web, to have an email to contact the organization, and do not have to have expressed any kind of illicit behaviors in the past. Briefly, thanks to ONEF, we managed to create an archive with all the projects available in Italy to implement networking about between different private, public, and ONG subjects, and to suggest some indicators which have been subscribed also by Professor Anna Maria Ajello and other authors and the participants that I saw today in the symposium, to improve financial education initiative and the policies in the future. Now, going quickly to the results, because I know that we are running out of time. You can have further information in the link in the slide. We saw that the number of subjects dealing with financial education projects in Italy has slightly shrunk from 2018 to the last ONEF survey. And this could be explained by COVID-19. In fact, some banks told us that they preferred to invest their money and resources more on health issues or helping entrepreneurs rather than financial education. And that's why also the number of projects slightly shrunk from the previous survey. But we also gather some positive signals, like, for example, more subjects from the public domain implementing projects on financial education. And this is very important, some projects which have been continuously done from 2017 up to nowadays. We know that continuity is not the only indicator of quality, but it's definitely better to have a project which has been carried on the time during many years, rather than some of these projects who have been just spotted and once a year in the domain of financial education, because they seem to be less effective than the previous one. Another critical point is the fact that ONF select 3 types of activities: programs, which have at least 2 meetings about financial education; resources like online books or video, which can be used autonomously by the users; and initiatives that generally last just 1 day or 1 meeting, like conference. And we saw that although many recommendations done by the National Committee or OCSE point on the usefulness of programs, actually what really increased from 3 years ago up to now are initiatives, which are the least effective. But a good sign is the fact that vulnerable groups like women or entrepreneurs or migrants received more attention in the last survey. Good point and bad point. I decided to mix it in this way in the presentation. So on the bad side, we saw that the objectives of these resources or program are still very generic in almost 40% of the sample. But there are also some of them who decided to invest in more clear and specific objectives. And this is a good sign. Yet, a very problematic point is still the lack of monitoring and evaluation. I don't know if this has been done in Finland or in other countries, but in Italy, as you can see, almost 70% of the subjects do not implement any kind of evaluation studies for their programs. So as for the final remarks, I think that it's positive that there are more networks in promoting financial education programs, and some of them are doing more efforts in defining clear objects and trying to do evaluation. But we still need to work on a better dialogue between university and banking institutions, and to promote also a better coordination with the national guidelines for financial education, which has been recently published in autumn by the Comitato per la Programmazione e il Coordinamento delle Attività di Educazione Finanziaria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your crystal clear presentation and for taking the time. So thank you very much. And I would like to introduce Monica Rivelli and give her the floor for her speech. Please, Monica.
Thank you, Roberto. Now I'll share my presentation. I hope you see it.
Yeah, okay. we can see. If you could, yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So it is a great pleasure for me to be here and discuss about spreading and teaching financial education at schools with such a great panel of experts. Let me briefly introduce the foundation I work for. The Fondazione per l'Educazione Finanziaria e al Risparmio. In English, we can call it Financial Education Foundation, FEDUF, is a non-profit organization founded by ABI, Italian Banking Association, to promote financial education as widely as possible and to spread financial and economical knowledge. Here list the values our initiatives and programs are based on, the values that drive our way to work. First of all, for us, it is important that everybody can be included and can have access to knowledge. Of course, mainly financial knowledge for all Italian people, from children to elderly. Then we work in an ethic way. That means, for example, that we have no commercial purpose behind the financial education programs. But we strongly believe that it is a way for banking and financial sector to contribute to the effort for the social responsibility. We do that in order to promote and spread active citizenship and sustainable development. Then later we'll get back on these two topics. And we do that, of course, trying to spread also innovative way of teaching in Italian schools and innovative tools for teaching. What we do, we design and implement financial education programs for all, as I already said, but we also, we design not only the contents, but also methodology and tools. We do not have only school programs, but we carry on lots of activities, website, educational shows, gamification, together with our members. And thanks to a wide network all over Italy. It is composed by banks, but also consumers associations, university experts, and so on. We promote cooperation between public and private institutions in order to share experiences and optimize resources concerning financial education. And everything we do, our contents, we provide to schools and to adults are developed and approved by our scientific committee. What we do for financial education at school? We have developed programs and initiatives following the guidelines given by an international institution, first of all, OECD. Our working model is based on a close collaboration with the Ministry of Education, as well as with local school offices. We have formal agreements with them. Our main project for school is called Economia at Scuola. And we offer financial education programs for free to all levels of school, primary, secondary, university, and so on. So in Italy, every teacher may use FEDUF programs and resources, videos, platforms, books, etc., for free. And we offer also a tutorship for teachers if they request it. Starting from April of the last year, our activities for school have been also completely digitalized. And now I would focus on some topics of this conference. It is called Reinventing Education. About financial education at schools, I would say that we are still inventing, but we can say what we learned and what will be good to improve in the short future. First of all, challenges posed by the contemporary world. So in school, we can offer not only traditional matters as Italian, math, science, and so on, but also financial education, because we are in a world that requires to know to act in a proper financial and economic way. It is not a technical issue. It is a citizenship one, because basic finance is crucial, is an element very, very important for an active citizenship, because finance is in the life of everybody. Those who do not understand, those do not decide, are excluded. Education for what, as well as how and for whom. How? We try to spread and to learn financial matters in an empathic and interesting way, mixing tools and also using interactive and ICT technologies. In our society that is so interconnected, it is so digital, it is necessary to find a way to talk in the language that everybody can understand, also using technologies. How? To make clear that it is something related to everybody. It is not only for economists or for men. It is for women too. It is for teenagers too. It is for elderly too. Then, particularly at school, we try to underline the connection between financial education and other school subjects. In some cases, it is clear, for example, money and history, or money and art, but also money and math, it is clear. But we can find connection also with science, money, the digital money, it is connected to the science, philosophy, literature, music, and so on. And the good news for teachers is that FEDUF, and together with another foundation, which is called FEM, will share ready-to-use tools starting from late 2021 to spread the weight of teaching economics together with the classical, the traditional subjects of Italian schools. For whom? Of course, all students from 5 to 25 years old, and but we do not have to forget adults. Another challenge posed by this conference is the reinvention of the educational field as a driver of more general and global changes. It is important to underline that financial education is not only knowledge, but it is also behavior and values. Let's think about the close relationship between economics and sustainable development. They are both pillars of our future. There is no one without the other. So to let know teenagers and students sharing and circular economy, for example, circular economy, sustainable finance, to know that, to make them clear that there are these economic approaches which can grant a more fair distribution of wealth. It's very, very important to make clear to young people that a fair economy is possible. It's very, very important. These are, for us, what can bring a more general and global change in teaching at schools. I've concluded my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you for sharing with us your experience. And I think it's very, very important to think how we can reinvent, let's say in that way, the teaching and the education. I think is crucial, and how can I say, take into account in a more general view financial literacy, but how to manage with the teaching of the other subjects, also this kind of topics. Thank you very much. I guess we have 2 minutes. If you like to add something, or I think we have this possibility, we can use it. We had so many suggestions and so good remarks, and we can think for a lot about that. If you would share with us some remarks or consideration, please feel free to do. No. So, Magda, would you like to add something?
Well, I think we heard a lot of very, very extremely interesting reflections. I think it really comes out that it's that, as you were saying, it's we have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge of what's going on, of things that are being done, and about what is effective and what's a bit less. Like Emanuela was telling us that there are a number of initiatives, but very few programs, or not very few, fewer programs, and we know they are more effective. We have very little impact analysis, and that's something that we have to perform more frequently, because that's the way to understand what we leave behind, whether something is really working, whether it transforms not just into notions, but also into behaviors, which is a very difficult thing to do. So I think we basically have all the elements of what needs to be done. We need a few steps. As I was trying to say, it would be very important to have something compulsory, but I know that's not the whole story, because having something compulsory without having the necessary materials, teachers coming with us, and hence being ready to form, to educate into this topic, which is somehow technical. It doesn't need to be for the final users. So we have to learn how to make technical things untechnical for the users. But for those who teach them, of course, some technicality is necessary. So we have a path to follow. And I think we need to make it all together with institutions, like, of course, the Ministry of Education, and with institutions like INVALSI, who is evaluating progresses and how schools and students are doing, but also all the stakeholders that are working on this, like ourselves, but other institutions, PEDUF, and many others who are doing programs. But also initiatives are relevant, of course, because they help making people aware of what's going on and how relevant it is. But I think times are ready, but we need to make things happen at this point. Thank you.
So thank you to everybody, to Arto and the other Italian colleagues. It was really a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you again, and thank you for the excellent organization. And I have to renew the apologies of our president not to be here today, but it was impossible, and I hope you can understand it. Thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day, and to have the possibility to attend the other conferences today and tomorrow. Thank you again. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.